are
Greg Giles
and Ryan Mallette.
And actually this week, a few people in the space actually got to play some games.
We did.
Oh my god.
Yay.
Doesn't
Video
happen
games.
that often.
Finally, I got to play some games.
You play a ton of games.
I do.
Of all of us, you actually play quite a bit of games. Mine are few and far between these days. I don't have a lot of time to play, so when I do, I try to maximize what I can actually play.
Yeah.
The other night, it was like 7 o'clock, or it was at the complete end of the day. We had all worked a full day, and we were sitting around the space, and there's a few of us here. Like, what do we have that all of us could play together? And somebody threw out Left 4 Dead. So we're like, oh, great. Love Left 4 Dead. One of my favorite games ever made.
I was that somebody.
That was a good game.
It's also several years old at this point, so it's kind of a well-worn path. I've probably played Left 4 Dead 2 100 times. So we're just like, oh, well, okay, what else is out there that could be cool? And we landed on something that I first noticed somebody playing when we hosted Extra Life, which is a charity streaming event where people play games nonstop in a kind of a round robin, or what's the best way? It's like a marathon of playing video games to raise money for Women and Children's Hospital here in town. So we had a whole group here at the game space doing a gaming 5K, so to speak, to raise money for Women and Children's Hospital. And during that run, I noticed...
Like a 5K where you just sit down.
Well, that's exactly where the idea came from. It's like, if they do these walks and charity runs to raise money, like, well, what about the people that don't want to go do that? Or what if it's really nasty out? Or what if you just want to get gamers in a room together and give them an excuse and do some good at the same time? So Extra Life was born. It's grown quite a bit. It's not just obviously here in town. It's a huge ongoing charity thing.
Born again.
So boo.
That's one of mine. You guys can use it if you want.
Thank you.
I will never.
I'll be here all podcasts.
So a bunch of guys were playing that. So they had a ton of games all lined up. They played things all ranging from 8-bit Castlevania speed runs all the way up to brand new games. But this was the first time I saw this game with one of the, in my opinion, worst titles in video game history.
Yeah.
It's called Warhammer, subtitle End of Times, subtitle Vermintide. So I don't know if they were trying to start like a series of series games. I don't quite get the idea of the double subtitle.
Yeah, I don't either.
I mean, I guess I get that it's the Warhammer universe, so that End Times could be a series of games. So maybe they're like, Vermintide is the first one, and we're going to make another one. So
End of Times.
But End of Times will be a specific Warhammer era or situation. I don't know.
Apparently it's when all the rats come.
Apparently. A tide of them.
So many tides.
And it does, though. It is. They come in. So that's the first point probably to make about this game, is that it is almost 1-to-1 Left 4 Dead.
It's shockingly close to Left 4 Dead, where if you really wanted to go into it and name the enemies by Left 4 Dead names, you absolutely could. And sit there and be like, oh, that's the hunter, that's the smoker.
Yep.
They perform very specific things. You'll hear the music and the rat ogre will come busting in. It's like, okay, it's the tank. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that the game uses them is very different. And I guess to just give some quick high-level description about what we're actually talking about, it's a medievally fantasy RPG version of Left 4 Dead. So there's classes and your typical fantasy archetypes. You've got your stout dwarves and your rogues with daggers and bows and arrows and wizards and soldiers and all that kind of stuff. Each class has different weapons and abilities that they can use, so it's not like Left 4 Dead right there, in the sense that in Left 4 Dead, all the characters are equal. Zoe is the same as Lewis, who is the same as, Bill. They all play exactly the same. It's all just aesthetic difference. Well, that's not so in this game. Each character actually has different weapons and attributes and like things that they can do. They'll seem to run at the same speed and jump at the same height. That's all equal, but the actual way they fight and what they're good at, like doing versus like ranged versus tanking versus whatever, like that is actually part of how that character is supposed to play.
Right.
So much in like Left 4 Dead, you can't just pick a team of 4 Bills. You can't. Once one person picks a specific class, that class is picked for the group. And you can't have like just a team of dwarves.
But like a team of 4 Bills doesn't really matter like in Left 4 Dead at all. I mean, like the people could be anybody. You get the same shit.
Right. It would if they were all Bill and Left 4 Dead, it wouldn't really change the game,
Exactly.
other than just breaking the immersion of having all the same character.
Right.
I
Yeah.
play
yeah.
with all Teletubbies in that game. So.
Oh, the mods in that are pretty funny.
I never
They're
played
wonderful.
the modded version of that game.
They're
as much
wonderful.
as I played Left 4 Dead, I always played vanilla because I loved it so much.
I do too. For a little while, I had the Shrek tank, and it would play All Star by Smash Mouth instead,
Oh,
of
no.
instead of the tank music. It was really funny, but
So
like,
you hear that like in the distance, like hey now, and
yeah,
you're just like, my
that's
God.
exactly what would happen.
I mean,
Does it make you equally infuriated as when you
I'm
actually
gonna-
hear the song?
It's
for
scarier.
yeah, I was gonna
Scarier.
say. I
Yeah.
was just gonna say. Yeah, it's gotta be scarier. Jesus.
It just reminds me of like the Macho Man mods for Skyrim or the other ones
Oh,
where
yeah.
like instead of hearing like the dragon cry in the distance, he's like, "Ooh, I'm coming."
Oh wow,
I can't do it as good. I wish Pismarov was here. He does a pretty good Macho Man.
he does it pretty good.
So anyway, yeah, the gameplay is very similar to Left 4 Dead, but it diverges in a few key areas, like choosing a class. Classes have different weapons that determines how they fight. Along with the weapons, it's way more melee based than Left 4 Dead.
Yeah.
The original Left 4 Dead didn't even have melee, which seems like a weird omission.
And I don't
in
think
hindsight.
Left 4 Dead 2 at the start did.
Oh, it absolutely did.
It did
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah, they added melee right away.
I mean, the original had melee, but not melee weapons.
No, it didn't have. It always had the ability to push people back.
Right, you could
Like,
you
you
could
could,
whack
you could
them.
bump them back, but
Yeah.
it didn't kill anybody. Like
No,
that-
yeah, it was always just a
That
bomb.
push is so huge
Yeah.
in that game.
So yeah, even when you're using like an axe or a sword, you can still push people back and then hit them.
Oh yeah.
so
good
like
point.
you always had the push, but they didn't have the actual melee weapons you could use. You really only had a pistol or double pistols was always
Mhm.
just your option. That had infinite ammo. That was it.
Yeah.
So if you ran out of ammo with your main weapon, you had that. But in Left 4 Dead 2, they added actual melee weapons, and they
Guitars.
feel so good in the game. It's like, why were these never even here?
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
well, how did you omit these in the first place?
I was surprised it worked as well as it did in a game like, the kind of game it is.
Yeah, I wondered if it was going to break it,
Yeah.
but it really doesn't, because a game like that is really all about spacing and protecting your group, and so letting the enemies get close is a risk reward. Like, you can actually kill like 3 or 4 zombies with one swing of a crowbar
Yeah.
if you line it up right, but they have to be right in your face with basically the ability to hurt you. Whereas, like, if you just laid into them with a hunting rifle from deep, like, there's no danger there, really, until they get closer.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you that kind of risk reward. And also it's great in, like, swarms. When you are being surrounded, I feel like actually having a baseball bat is better than having the double pistols.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
It definitely is, yeah.
So it actually serves a purpose where you can actually make that decision. Do I want this Desert Eagle pistol or the double pistols, or do I want to have a crowbar, which has always been my perennial favorite. Given the opportunity, I always rock hunting rifle crowbar. Left 4 Dead,
Always about
always.
the sword.
The sword.
Oh yeah.
I got nothing against it. I got
Just
nothing
whacking
against
people with a guitar.
The guitar is good. I usually go like katana, AK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Yeah.
I really early on, I found that I fell into a good groove with the hunting rifle, and that's always been my go-to. Like if it shows up at any point in the map, then that's going to be my gun through the rest of the campaign.
Yeah.
Like I'll forego picking up anything else to keep that.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about the melee in Vermintide?
So it flips the whole script on Left 4 Dead. So whereas in Left 4 Dead, you have the hunting rifle, M16s, shotguns, you're shooting people at distance, and you only really go to your crowbar or your katana when you're surrounded.
Yeah.
And you need to or you're out of ammo. Like it's really your weapon of last resort when shit's going wrong. Vermintide's the exact opposite, where your primary weapon is melee. With every character, pretty much. I think the mage has a little bit more ranged ability than some of the other ones.
Oh yeah, you get sweet fire spells, right?
Right.
Yeah, I play the mage, and I find that you can really get away. I almost never use my melee, but you still have to kind of. I mean, it's also not like I can just fire off whatever I want all the time.
Yeah, it keeps you limited, and certain characters are limited different ways. Like certain characters have a shotgun or a crossbow, or like I play the rogue a lot, and you get a bow and arrow, and so you can snipe things from deep, or you can shoot really fast shots to take out groups or to dump them into it. But I found my way playing the game. It really flips it the other way, where when you have space and you see people in the distance, you switch to your projectile. And then when a lot of enemies come, you just go right back to your melee. So your primary is always melee, and then you only use the range when it becomes convenient or when it's good. Like the tank, it's good to use ranged weapons on because he'll mess you up if he gets in close. But also, there's more depth to the melee combat in this than in Left 4 Dead. Where in Left 4 Dead, you have, you basically you push people back and hit them. This one actually has like a block mechanic and a pushback, and also potential for like a parry kind of counter.
Oh, nice.
Where if you can time it and you get it in, you can block people back and hit them like on a counter with like enemies coming in.
That's cool.
So that adds a little bit of the depth to the melee. At the end of the day, you do a lot of clicking and smashing and just flailing in a group.
It's very slashy.
Very, very hack and slash, very fun. Like, if you've played Left 4 Dead 2 and you've been surrounded with a baseball bat and you've just spun around smashing zombies' heads open, very much you'll be right at home with playing the dwarf with a hammer and just spinning around smashing zombies' heads open, pretty much. But they look like rats this time instead of people.
Which is great. I was thinking about, like, how zombies are just kind of like, that's always the easy thing for like a swarm of just mindless whatevers to kill. And like rats, that's good too though. Like that's never done. And it's, like what else? That's the other thing. Only other thing I can think of that would swarm like that really.
And be acceptable to just murder.
Right. And then just
wholesale.
Takes the guilt out of it. Get all of my lands.
Well, that's the whole
vermin
where you fall into those stereotypical enemies where you have demons and Nazis and aliens and things that you can just lay waste to without feeling bad about it.
Yeah.
Even though I guess technically Nazis are humans, they don't count when people just blast them.
Yeah.
The way they're treated in video games.
The only guilt-free kind of war game.
Yeah. So they came up with a new one. Zombie rats. I guess they're not really zombies. I put them more in the line of like orcs from like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that was kind of the vibe.
They wear armor. They use melee weapons. That kind of stuff. They're not like zombies where they're just mindless, like flying at you with their hands and teeth. They actually have gear.
But they still pour out in hordes, and there's still like the horde mechanic is like identical. Like there's a horn sounds, and then like we gotta get our shit together, and like,
Smash Mouth starts playing.
Smash Mouth comes in.
Your Macho Man at distance. It's like, oh no.
Your Macho Man. I think the game definitely takes the formula and makes it its own, though. Like it feels way denser than Left 4 Dead. So one is like because the combat's so much more up close, that's bigger. That's a bigger deal. And it, when I first started playing, I was trying to go with my guns or whatever first, and quickly realized if you play primarily with your ranged, you just can't. Like you just basically can't. You have to really center it around melee for the most part. The other thing is, this game will punish you way harder for getting split up.
I swear, in my limited time playing the game, I swear that this one, like, whereas Left 4 Dead, it could happen, but it always felt like they were already out there. I feel like in Vermintide, if you get separated from the group or you just wander away, I'm like, I want to see what's over here when everybody else is going somewhere else. I swear the game just spawns a special to just punish you.
I actually think it might too. I mean, it really is that dependable.
If you're alone for more than like 20 seconds, chances are you're getting jumped.
Yeah.
Like you really need to stay together and watch each other's backs.
Yeah.
And I do notice this game is much more willing to just drop in enemies behind you and not just specials, so like normal enemies where like it looks like a courtyard is clear and you've cleared it up to the wall and there's nothing there, and then you turn your back on it and you start going this way and you start getting hit from behind and it's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And you turn around, there's a lot of spots in the game where if you're paying attention you'll see enemies like jumping walls or like jumping down from windows or like rooftops and stuff.
Gotcha.
There's no real one spot where like, oh, the enemies are coming from this direction. Like they'll come from any direction at any time. Yeah. Even if you feel like you've cleared an area and you spend too much time in it and you're walking out, they'll start coming.
If you linger, it'll just start. Yeah, you'll just basically have to start all over again if you clear an area.
Vermin.
Yeah,
it's really
and so
everywhere.
Like, I feel like, and so another thing about the feel is like, because of the source engine and just like the nature of it, that engine does big open spaces really well. So Left 4 Dead is very airy. There's a lot of range. You're always using your guns, and there's a lot of distance stuff going on. And this game is again takes the opposite approach in the same way that it has both, but it has both melee and range, but it comes from the melee side, and This has open areas, but it primarily focuses in on like walls and rooms and closed spots. So not only is it, I mean, that's another reason it's important to stick together, is because if you just lose line of sight on somebody, they don't even have to be far. They can just be a room away, and you can't, you're more in rooms and nooks and crannies and alleys and stuff, way more than you are in Left 4 Dead.
And this game doesn't seem to give a shit about your current environment or situation, whereas I feel like the spawning algorithm, the game director under the hood of Left 4 Dead, which is brilliant, by the way.
Yeah, it really is.
There's only certain areas where you can generally expect to have a tank charge you. It's not discrete points where there's like, oh, there's always a tank here, or like there's definitely going to be like, or there'll never be a tank here. But it's very low probability in certain areas, like if there's ladders and like vertical stuff and this really, really super tight corridors.
If you don't have room to work the tank and run around and and get your space.
Well, and it's also because one of the ways you can destroy the tank in that game is if you can get them stuck in something, or like there's actually one of the finales in Left 4 Dead has you in a boathouse on a river, and you're guaranteed to get attacked by a tank twice in that finale.
At least.
Well, it spawns more once the boat shows up and you have to make the run to the boat. But you have to fight, you have to defend yourself in that area through at least 2 tanks. And one of the ways to destroy those tanks is they will come through the doors and the windows and the ceiling and all that. Mm-hmm. But if you get them to go through the windows, they're too big. And they kind of get like crunched up in it. And they'll come through it, but they come through it really slow. Gotcha. So if you're sitting there with an auto shotgun, you can just dump 10 shoddy shells point blank into their face and they will die.
So the big space is a necessity in that way for
so the tank's much more like it. If he gets through the window and he's in a small room with you, you're screwed. Yeah, you have to make sure you take him out as they're coming through. So this happened to us. I'm just bringing this up because this happened to us.
Right. Yeah, it's actually a very important point.
This is last night. We started a level, and we're probably 30 seconds into the level. There's like a secret passageway where you have to pull a book on a shelf. Very, very fantasy, very fantasy style. It's pretty cool.
And pull a book on a shelf. Well, right before you get into the room with the book with the shelf, there's a thing where games will do where there's like a drop down, so you can't get out of that room.
Yeah, you can't get back.
Yeah.
Good.
So you pull the book, and the bookshelf slides across, and it reveals the secret passage into this big spiral staircase that goes up into a tower, and the game spawned a tank and like 2 other specials.
Just basically everything
right at the same time in this super tight, tiny little area.
Yeah, there was
where like not only was it a tiny little area on the spiral staircase, it's only like 2 characters wide, and the tank was just barreling down it, just destroying our squad. And we just got pinned in the corner by an assassin and a packmaster, which is basically their equivalent of a smoker, where they'll grab you and drag you away. And the tank we from the point of spawning our characters in the map to the point of failure, probably about a minute and a half, and we're just like, holy shit, this game doesn't play.
And this is on normal.
Yeah, this is on normal difficulty, by the way.
Yeah.
So do you feel that it's more? Does it feel like cheaper than Left 4 Dead?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's times where it can catch you like that, where it's you're just
like that doesn't even feel fair. Like that doesn't feel reasonable.
Yeah. Sure.
I thought it was funny.
It was funny for sure.
And I think it was funny because it happened right away. I feel like if we were at the end of the mission and we'd been putting together like a quality campaign run and that happened like right at the end, it would have felt really cheap.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be enjoying it as much as I kind of just enjoyed the fact that it happened.
I mean, the campaigns are a decent length, right?
They're shorter than Left 4 Dead, actually.
Yeah,
so
they are.
Left 4 Dead campaigns typically break out in, you find a safe room. They're like levels. There's probably 4 or 5 levels per campaign. You get to a safe room, you restock, you move on. But you're always safe to that point where the safe room is.
These are like one of the legs of those is a whole level.
Right. Each one of these is like a standalone thing where you have a specific objective, like acquire explosives or get flour and food for the army or clear an area of X. Blow the giant horn to get the guard involved. So all these things are kind of strung together in a very loose story of like these are all things that you're doing as like a resistance group to fight off this Vermintide taking over the city.
Because it's the end of times.
Yeah, but in Warhammer. But so each one of them is kind of a standalone thing. Like each mission starts with, go
Gotcha.
below the horn to alert the guard, or go get the sacks of flour, and you fight through the whole area, and then there's a finale where you fight through there to get the sacks of flour, and
blow the horn, blow the saxophone,
and then it's over. So there's no safe rooms. There's really no checkpoints even. If you don't finish the mission,
you're back at the beginning.
You're done.
Yeah.
There is,
and the game,
if you die, it will do the thing where you can catch up with, like, somebody will be in a room ahead and then you can free them. But that's about the only...
Right, so if you lose like one or two characters, just like Left 4 Dead, they'll spawn in a character closet or something.
Yeah.
And then you can go free them and they can rejoin, so it just doesn't knock out your whole group. But if your whole group goes down altogether, just like Left 4 Dead, it's game over.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that differentiates Left 4 Dead loss versus loss in this is if you lose in Left 4 Dead, it's like, oh, sucks, your campaign's over, like, that stinks. But if you lose in this... there's loot involved with your classes.
That's what I was
and
there's
each class has its own weapons. It has their own. They all have a melee weapon, a ranged weapon, armor, and like extra traits and abilities and stuff. They're all loot based.
Yep.
And the only way to get that loot is to complete a mission.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the mission is complete, you kind of basically roll some dice, and it awards you a new piece of gear.
Mm-hmm.
And it's dependent on all the stuff that you found and did through the mission, and also the level of difficulty you're playing on. And that'll, it does a dice roll and it awards you with something.
Yeah.
But if you lose, you don't get to roll those dice.
Right.
And so you get nothing. So you could be right at the end, like fighting the finale, dragging those freaking sacks of flour to the cart, and just be one short and have your team go down. And it's just like, that's it.
Yep.
Good day, sir.
Yeah.
You get nothing. You get like a smattering of experience, which is like negligible, and it's like, tough shit.
Yeah, it really is very small.
Yeah, from what I saw of the game, that was, to me, I'm usually not like huge on loot and stuff, but it seemed like an interesting take on that formula for Left 4 Dead. Because I was like, oh, like, loot, weapon upgrades. Oh, it would be interesting in a game like that, I feel.
Yeah, and there's some crafting mechanics where you can break down things that you don't want to get materials, to upgrade weapons that you do have, but it's all very high level. Like, it doesn't go super deep. It's not it's not like Fallout or something where you're falling down a rabbit hole where you're crafting like insane stuff
and you're just hoarding.
No, it's really just, oh, I've got this dagger and sword that has like a potential trait on it. I need crafting materials to unlock it.
Okay,
and so then that's it.
Yeah,
so it's very discrete choices. It's very when I say discrete, I mean like distinct. Like you've got two options to do something, pick one of the options and go, kind of thing, as opposed to infinite configurability.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't seen too much of it yet, but at least, I saw my friend go through like a process like that. Like, it was a risk completely to break down these two weapons. And he's like, hopefully I get what I need. And he did, and he got this sweet hammer. And I was like, nice.
And it's cool because the weapons really change how you play.
Yes.
Because almost every character has like a couple of options regarding weaponry. So just for the simplest version, if you look at like the dwarf character, you can use a shield and an axe, or you can use like a two-handed warhammer. And depending on which one you pick, you play very differently. And even within those subclasses, there's different variabilities of it. So like I was playing as the rogue, you can play with two daggers, where you're just stabbing like really fast all over the place, or you can play with two long swords and you're doing like big sweeping motions. Or you can use, I just unlocked a mix where I've got a long sword in one hand and a little dagger in the other, and it plays even differently there.
Oh, that's cool.
And so it actually affects the actual animations and how many enemies you hit, how fast you attack, how much damage each attack does. They all have properties like this penetrates armor, this can do headshots, like that kind of stuff. So there's a lot there, but it doesn't... Initially I thought, and I'm still not completely sold on it one way or the other, but initially I thought the way that they did loot was going to bother me because it kind of puts it all or nothing. But at the end of the day, what it really actually does is gives you a guaranteed drop at the end of a mission if you're successful. If you beat a mission, you're going to get a piece of gear. It might be a piece of crap, but you're going to get something. And if it's a piece of crap, you can break it down into crafting materials and save it for something good. Or like break it down and like sacrifice 5 items to make a new one or something like that.
Gotcha.
So I think that's kind of cool. But what the the big decision there that I like a lot, and something that bogs down a lot of these kind of games, is that there's no loot on the field. You don't kill enemies or like take down a tank and a sword pops out of his back, and then everybody makes a beeline for it.
Yeah.
Or if it's just a game where like all the loot's for you, like Borderlands or The Division, you don't sit there and like look at it and check out its stats and go into your menu and dick around. Like there's none of that. So it's basically
not in the mission. No.
Right. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
At no point in the mission does it let you just go into your inventory and screw around.
It does at the beginning.
That's not in the mission. That's the beginning of the mission. The mission hasn't started yet. It's the starting room. Come on.
No.
Splitting hairs here.
No, at the beginning of a mission.
Right. There's a starting room of the mission. You're splitting hairs here.
What do you mean?
When you spawn in the mission, there's a chest there where you can pick stuff. That starting room in the mission. Like I just said, I'll say it 5 times.
Yeah, well, it's not a room always. I mean, it's a street, so...
We're splitting hairs here. They're threatening castration.
Well, no, it's a necessary distinction, because the lobby is a room that you're in, so I'm making sure you're not talking about the lobby.
No, I'm not talking about the lobby.
Yeah.
I'm talking about
that's another cool thing the game does, by the way, is the lobby is like a physical place. And I love that. I love that everybody's just running around. Instead of just sitting, like in Left 4 Dead, you just sit kind of in a menu, and everybody just kind of sits there and ready up. Everybody's in this, like, running around, like, shooting arrows at walls and fucking around and working on their items or whatever. And I like that a lot.
This person's called me 9 times today and won't leave a voicemail. I just refuse to answer it.
Do you know who it is?
I have no idea. Just fuck off.
Might be important. But they would leave you a voicemail, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
This is important.
Yeah, they can leave a voicemail. Go away.
We can mark that part.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll probably leave it.
They're probably going to call back 4 more times. So. Anyway, completely derailed that.
So,
lobby.
What you were saying, you were saying that there's at no point does it let you drop a sword and everybody's standing around looking at the shit in the middle of the mission.
Right. That's what I'm saying. At no point in mission do you get to mess with your gear.
Isn't there like a pickup, though, that you can get an extra dice roll or something
That's
like that?
That's for everybody.
Right.
So it doesn't matter who gets it.
Is it a chest? Or...
In a chest, there will be a loot die, and no matter who picks it up, everybody at the end gets that die.
Yeah, same thing goes for, there's also a thing called tomes in the missions, where they're like little books that you can find that give you more die to roll, or like special die to roll in like the dice roll after the mission. But they take up an inventory slot to carry.
Specifically, your healing inventory slot, your healing potion slot.
Of course.
So, so you have to make that decision, and you kind of keep carrying it along. Like, do you want to have a med kit, or do you want to carry this tome to the end of the mission? And if you die because you didn't have the health, well, the tome doesn't mean anything. You know, the tome doesn't count for anything unless you get out of the mission with it.
It's interesting. The game does that a few ways where it'll give you a little bit of a sliding difficulty. That's one where you can forego healing for loot. And the other is like you can have trinkets, and so some trinkets will give you bonus healing or give you, like I just got one that like I think has like a 5 to 15% chance that when I use a grenade it won't be consumed. But then there's also trinkets that are that help you at the roll at the end. So basically you're foregoing any combat advantages when you use this loot trinket. You're basically foregoing any combat benefit to say at the end I get a slightly better chance of getting a certain item. And so that's another way they sort of let you hone the difficulty a little bit.
That's one of the starting ones that actually, those are the only trinkets that I have. Basically the game, since the roll, to clarify, the dice roll at the end of the mission, it's for any item for any class.
Yeah. So
say you have a favorite class that you're playing, you could very easily roll the dice and get a weapon or gear for some other class.
Gotcha.
That doesn't mean anything to you.
Which is entirely what's happened to me in every game. Every roll so far. Yeah.
Yeah. But you can break them down for materials if you don't want them, or you can... the devs actually say they do it on purpose because they want to encourage people not to stick to a class.
Yeah.
They want people to try to play the game different ways and mix up how they play the game.
Oh, that's cool.
So if you got... Like, actually, I just did it earlier, one of the best loot rolls I got was for a shield and an axe for the dwarf character, which I've never played as. But since I got this awesome shield and axe, I'm like, well, I'm going to use them now because now they'll have something sweet.
Nice. And
it was actually a lot of fun. It was definitely, and it was way different than playing as I've been playing primarily as the rogue, which they try not to. It's like, don't specialize. I'm like, no, I'm specializing. I like that style. I feel like I'm falling into it good.
Well, good on them to trick you out of it then.
Yeah, so they did. Then it succeeded, and it made me have fun in a different way.
Good.
And also to see like how another person who I'd be playing the game with, who might be playing that character, like what they're dealing with, like how they're playing the game, which is an interesting way to see it because it is very different.
Yep.
Playing kind of as more of a tanking type character as opposed to like a speed attack character.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool that it breaks it up by class like that. The loot system is pretty unforgiving, but my favorite part about it is it never stops the game because of loot. Like,
I think that's really huge too. That's something I can't, because it's frustrating for both the person that got the loot and the people that didn't. Because the person that got the loot is trying to sit there and figure out what they want to do, and everybody else is like, come on, dude. So, like, and everybody that didn't get the loot's pissed off because this guy's just standing there. And so it's really everybody kind of loses with that.
And then you get somebody who's like, oh, well, I can take this if I drop this and I do that. And then, 5 minutes later, you and everybody else are on a different mission and they're a million miles away.
Yeah.
I mean, that happened in Borderlands more than once.
Oh, God.
Where somebody's just like, digging through they just leveled up. Now they're going to dig through their class and figure out how they're going to spend their points and go through their loot.
So
and it's like,
many problems with Borderlands on that front.
And I didn't have as many. I feel like enough times that happened when I was playing with friends. It happened to all of us at the same time. Yeah. So it's like, okay, guys, like, take a break, go get a beer. We're going to mess with our classes for a minute. Like, I'm going to upgrade my character. We're going to mess with loot. As long as everybody agrees, that's okay.
Yeah.
But if you're mid-mission and, like, an awesome shotgun pops out of an enemy, and you're like, oh, I want to check this out, and everybody's else like, we don't care about that. We're on to the next thing. And they're trucking off into the distance at top speed. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, damn it.
This really kills the pace of everything. Which, in a game like this, that would be virtually impossible, it seems, like, to deal with something like that.
Well, the other thing is, like, I think partially just good game design decision to keep things moving along, but also a game like this wouldn't allow you to do that.
Exactly.
Like we mentioned earlier, it would not hesitate. Let's just say there was a loot mechanic where you could check your stuff. This game above many others, I would expect to, like, spawn a tank on you.
Oh, yeah.
For messing with
it. And that could be an interesting approach to it, honestly, too, because it really would create a panic situation out of looting as well.
Yeah.
So it could be good either way.
It could.
But I do understand why, like, that is a good decision here.
Yeah, definitely. It's good, not only good, but maybe necessary.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting stuff. I mean, we've only been playing a little bit. Like I said, I don't have a ton of time to play games recently, so it's nice to actually play one, and specifically one that's a cooperative game like this that has some interesting new mechanics for what it is. Time will tell how deep the game is and how much replayability is all there, but it does follow the same Left 4 Dead style of you can play the same map multiple times, and the enemies are not in the same location.
Cool.
Loot's not in the same location, and when I say loot, I mean like med packs and ammo.
Yeah, and that's another thing it kind of sucks at doing is like, and that I don't ever think Left 4 Dead would I don't ever remember it giving us like health packs at completely irrelevant times, where this game will give you health. Like when you start the mission, you might open chest and you just started and you're full health. You haven't even seen an enemy, and and you'll open a chest and it's all healing items. And you're just like, what the fuck would I need this for? It's really frustrating that they don't sort of filter that a little bit and not allow that to spawn there. It's not that big of a deal.
It's not that big of a deal.
But those are sort of the details that Left 4 Dead really gets right.
As long as it's not in lieu of spawning more health packs down the line. If it was like, oh, we spawned 20 health packs in this level, but they're all at the beginning, then you'd be screwed.
Yeah.
It might do that, though.
We don't know. Yeah. We just don't know if that's actually the case. But there's one thing that the game does that annoys me just because of the way it's signaled. And Left 4 Dead is also guilty of this, but in a much, much less egregious way. And I'm making a big deal out of this, but it's so small. Is that
that's what we're here for.
The game will, right? The game will spawn chests that it will highlight and be like, come open me, and like it'll have like nice Left 4 Dead outline around it. Like, oh, come open me, chest. And you pop it open, it's just empty.
Good.
Oh man,
it will spawn empty.
No, it
spawns empty chests like crazy. It's like, oh, there's a chest over here. You pop it open, nothing in it. It's like, damn it! Are you kidding me? Just don't spawn it. Don't waste my time. Don't let me come over here and mess with this.
Yeah. But I mean, really like fucking with you. Apparently.
I mean, partially it could be, I could see in a certain scenario where it's like, oh, they lure you into a room and then you get nailed because you went to check a chest that had nothing in it. like that's kind of like the risk reward, I guess. But and Left 4 Dead will do that too. Like if you open like a med shelf, like one of those cabinets, sometimes there's nothing in them.
That's true.
You know, but they don't highlight them like a big deal. And those are also kind of fixtures in the map in Left 4 Dead.
Yeah,
like
so
those med shelves
you
are
can
always in the
check
same
them
spot.
And also, I think those are also. I mean, I think all of those are somewhat dynamically populated based on how your team is doing, too. So that kind of determines what's in them.
Yeah, they definitely adjust to your skill level to like ramp up the difficulty or not, depending on how well the game thinks you're doing.
Yeah, it has like there's like a stress. It's like a stress thing where like the game kind of calculates how stressed your team is, and then the spawns are predicated on that.
Right.
That's
so
Left 4 Dead.
If your team is basically, you haven't even picked up, it spawned 5 med packs and it didn't even pick up any of them because you all had full health, then it's just like, all right, well,
Here's a tank.
the next time, here's
Here's
a tank, and the next time you find one of these cabinets, it's going to have like one thing of pills in it.
Yeah.
So.
And another thing this game does, one thing it does that I really like is the ability to tag enemies. So when you see a special, you can hit T. You look at it and you hit T, and then it has a blue outline, and so then on everybody's screen it's flagged. It's so good. It's so
awesome.
It's so great.
The same goes for items too. Like
and
if
items,
you like find a health pack or like a potion of strength or something like that that's in there.
Yeah, like
you can just tag it with a button, and then everybody can see it.
That's cool.
Because before we found that out, like first time we're playing it, in typical co-op game fashion, like I found a chest that had like 4 health kits in it. And I grabbed one, and everybody else is running around without a health kit, and I'm like, "Hey guys, there's one over here," and everybody just keeps going. And I'm like, "No, over here!" I'm like jumping up and down. I'm like, "Get the health packs!" They're like, "What? What's going on?" Like dicking around somewhere else. I'm just like, "Fine, you guys die then. I don't care." So now it's like I don't even need to say like, "Hey, there's health over here. Hit T, tag it. They can see where it is if they want to come get it."
That's
it's
cool.
on them instead of having to stand there and jump up and down.
Yeah, like
where it is.
Left 4 Dead, you could call it out. Or like your character automatically would sometimes.
And this does
like,
that as well.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
It does
okay.
both. Yeah.
Nice.
It's worth noting that I've played a lot of hundreds of hours again. It's another game I've played a couple hundred hours of. But not in a long time. So some of this stuff might be in Left 4 Dead by now. I don't actually know, but I don't think it is.
What's that?
Like the ability to tag enemies could have been patched in. I don't know.
I mean, I think you can hit like the use button on people, and your character will like point and like say "hey" or something like that, or like they call it out verbally, but there's no like outline.
There's no outline.
Yeah, it doesn't highlight it.
Yeah.
I remember my first beer.
Yeah, I just spilled beer on myself trying to take my first sip here. First baby sip. I'm just derailing this podcast.
Phone
What
calls.
a drunk.
He's drinking.
You've had like a quarter beer, dude. You might want to take it easy.
Great.
So anyway, we've been having some fun with it. It's definitely a great game to play with it. Just like Left 4 Dead, we left a lot of things unsaid just by saying that it's like Left 4 Dead in the sense that it's a 4-player co-op. You have to play together. You have to work together. If you get separated, you die. There's certain positions it puts you in where you're at the mercy of your team helping you. You can't just try to Rambo this thing yourself.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I always loved about Left 4 Dead, in particular, compared to many other cooperative games, is that it not only makes the game cooperative and encourages you to play cooperatively, it also has the stick of if you don't play cooperatively, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And so a game like that very quickly weeds out people who are like griefers or who don't want to play together or who are just bad teammates.
Not entirely, but
it does a great job of weeding those people out.
Yeah.
Like, they'll go play Call of Duty or something. Those type of people don't enjoy the game as much. So it just by virtue of being what it is, it makes you play a certain way, which and a very helpful and fun cooperative way, which I like quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. So everybody's on the same team. It's cool.
That's good. It sounds good. I played just a tiny bit of it, but I'm encouraged now. Yeah, kind of want to dive into that again.
Yeah, I mean, do you have a computer that can run it? You can play.
Yeah.
We're playing tonight. We have 3.
We'll talk later.
I mean, that's my Friday night. I don't know about you.
So, I guess I'm just going to throw this out there, a similar thing, but also flip side, Rocket League. A lot of people have been obsessed with Rocket League recently. And we had some pretty great games.
My game of the year last year.
Yeah, we have had some pretty great games here at the Game Space at Arcade Nights. One of the rare events that we have that's predicated around actually playing games instead of making them. The last time we had one, we had 4-player cooperative versus 4-player cooperative.
Good.
So it was
Good.
it was an 8-player game where it was a team of 4 versus a team of 4 that were all in the same room together, and that's a lot of fun. The way that breaks out. So it's like you're working together, but also competitively against people who are sitting right behind you. And yeah, that game has legs that I didn't think it had.
Oh yeah.
It's such a simple game, and it's almost such a simple execution that it really tricks you into thinking that by how polished and good it is, because the systems underneath it are way more complicated than they initially let on, and the ability for high level play is so huge. Like the gap between people who are really good at that game versus the people who are just picking up the controller is gigantic.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, you can hand that controller to somebody who isn't even necessarily that great at games, and they can have fun driving around,
And they can hang in, yeah,
trying to
they
hit the
hang in
ball
there.
into the goal, and they can be of use as opposed to just being completely useless. Or
Yeah.
That's true. They'll run into the other players by accident.
yeah. So it's kind of amazing that they pulled off such a simple to play game that has such an impossible to master top tier.
Yeah.
That if you go online and watch some of the YouTube videos of some of the top players,
Okay.
it doesn't even seem like that's the same game.
Yeah.
It's like they're like they just didn't even touch the ground for they covered the whole map and they were just carrying the ball in the air. That's not a thing that you can do.
Yeah.
But apparently they can. And also we didn't know all the different mechanics of the game that we're still trying to figure out, which has been adding a lot. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up as that's been a great one where a lot of people have been playing on the side together or also competitively and just been having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. That's Rocket League. The game before we talked about was Warhammer End of Times Vermintide, and then we were just talking about Rocket League just to keep everybody. Yeah, we can listen to podcasts and stuff.
That is good to do.
Yeah,
I get lost with a lot of podcasts.
Or you don't start listening till you hear some cool stuff, and then you're like, "What is this game?"
Yeah, what the hell are they talking about? They started a half hour ago.
Yeah.
No, yeah, not many podcasts do that, so I appreciate it.
So yeah, we should cap them. So yeah, Rocket League's good.
Yeah, I just wanted a side note on that. But
did anyone try the hockey mode?
I've only ever played the one mode in that game, which is the default.
I haven't tried it yet. I was just curious. Yeah, there's a hockey puck mode.
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
That actually sounds like it would reduce a lot of
work?
complexity.
Does that not bounce as much as the ball?
Yeah, it slides
it just slides around.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Now I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet, but I've heard it's fun. But it will slide up the walls and stuff like that then.
Actually, that would it would encourage you to actually drive up the walls. Where I feel like right now, with the level that we play at, driving up the wall is really just, that means you screwed up.
Yeah.
it's always something. If you're driving up the wall and you're on the ceiling, it's like, I'm on the ceiling, how'd I get down here?
Get off, asshole.
Just let go. I can't, I'm scared.
Then you fall.
Yeah, so that sounds kind of crazy. If
I also
it
get
sticks to the walls and the ceiling. You'd actually drive up there and play it upside down. That sounds amazing.
Oh, I
don't know if that's the case.
I don't think it sticks, but it will slide up.
It'll shoot up.
Yeah, it's the ball will fly and bounce and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The puck just slides and glides along. So
slides and glides,
sliding and gliding. That's all I know about that. I just haven't tried it yet. So,
well, speaking of trying
it, I tried a thing.
Masterful.
Great segue. I got to try out Valve's and HTC's Vive.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Where did you try that?
My good buddy got one of the, what are they in beta right now or something? He got one of those beta kits.
The
pre-release. It's coming out soon though.
April. First ones will be out in April.
Yeah.
Same time as the Oculus, despite pre-orders opening way after.
Yeah. Man, it's really cool.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, my experience with VR is pretty much limited to here. I've tried out your Oculus several times, and it's awesome. It's really neat to just sit there and just experience that.
Mm.
So my buddy, he has it set up probably in a room about this size, like 10 by 10 or whatever this would be. It is so weird to just be able to walk around and also interact with that in ways. Like you have what's the name of the thing where you can see your hands? Like you have
Elite
that
motion.
Yeah, you have the Elite Motion at least. Like this being built with those controllers, it's so seamless with how it works with it. Certainly just a completely like mind-boggling experience for me. And like I don't know, like I like VR and I like the idea of it. This was the first time I was just like, wow, like this is crazy.
So what was it that you played? Or?
So I first did like, there's just a sea demo, like just a little tech thing where you're on a ship and you're at the bottom of the ocean. And there's just shit swimming by, just fish.
But there's no bobbing like this. It doesn't move or anything, right? Like is it?
No. You're on a ship, a sunken ship.
Okay.
You're on the deck of it,
Okay.
sitting there at the bottom of the ocean. I don't remember the name of this demo. But yeah, there's just fish swimming around.
Oh,
and
was
like,
it what's that Half-Life ship that everybody? The Borealis? Is it called Borealis?
I don't think so. It was something. It was just like a small team put it together, maybe like.
Oh, this isn't like a Valve thing.
No, this isn't.
Okay,
this isn't a Valve
bad.
one. I don't believe. It was like a dozen people or something put it together. So you're standing on the deck of the ship, and you can just look around, but you can walk around too. Like I believe it dynamically scales the size of the ship deck to your room.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just walk around and like peer over the side of the ship and stuff, and like there's like a plane down at the bottom there and stuff, and like this big giant whale just swims by you, and it's just really crazy in a lot of ways. You can look up and you just see like the ocean top is like 300 feet above you. You're just like, there's the top of the ocetion there.
Yeah.
So I did that. I did the Valve Portal demo, which you're in a room with you can use a controller to like teleport yourself across the room. So at least like, because the room as a space is bigger than your actual room.
Mm-hmm.
So they give you that ability to like point and shoot, and then it'll like morph
right,
over there.
Okay, that's a good question. That's kind of what I was waiting to ask you, how that worked.
Yeah, it's disorienting in that way when you just flash across the room, but you catch up and you're like, oh, okay. And the Vive is really neat in that you know your space generally. I only hit a wall once with my hand.
How does it communicate the boundaries of your physical space?
A grid will pop up if you're about maybe a foot from the wall.
Okay.
So like you have like an extra foot beyond the grid pretty much. It's roughly a foot, maybe a foot and a half.
It's the same technique they use when I'm using my DK2 or some of the stuff that I have with the Razer Hydra, which does pretty much the same thing that the Lighthouse hand controllers that the Vive uses.
Yeah.
Does the same thing where it's set up to a base station. And if you're standing there playing like a cover shooter where you're moving around and ducking and moving forward and leaning around stuff, if you get too close to the screen or the base station, it'll throw up a virtual grid that just lets you know, like, oh, you're too close.
Cool.
Like,
yeah.
You're too close, man.
You're too close, man.
Yeah, so this does that for the whole room. So, like, the Valve one, it was just gorgeous looking, that Portal demo.
Yeah.
The weirdest thing that happens, like, at one point, I don't remember the name of the Portal 2 like co-op robots, but like the shorter looking one, that one walks in the room, and I was just like, I don't know what to do here. Like, holy shit, is this guy just gonna like kill me or something?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know. And it was just weird because it's just it's Alice, right? That's the name. Yeah. Like it's like it came in right through that wall there. And you're just like, oh, here's this like 5-foot robot sitting here next to me. I should probably back up a little bit. I'm just like, this is weird.
Yeah.
And then like GLaDOS comes and says jokes and stuff and yells at you and
says jokes.
There's cake.
Calls you a monster.
What? There's cake.
There is actually cake.
That sounds like bullshit.
There really is cake. Spoiler alert. But man, that one's really cool, and like the room like morphs around you and stuff, like Portal style, like when they're building puzzles and stuff, especially in Portal 2.
Like wall panels like flip around and stuff. Yeah,
and it's just all around you happening, and like the floor opens up and everything. It's just really cool looking. Like my friend's brother was trying it. He's just like, I want to step over, but I don't want to step over. Like as the floor is opening up, he's like, I don't know what to do. Like it's weird, and he just ended up backing up. Like it's that, like it messes with your head that much that you're just kind of like, oh man, like something's going on here. I'm
Right.
kind of uncomfortable right
it's
now.
It's funny how that works because I've got a whole bunch of Oculus demos, even in the DK1, like really bad screen doory type days.
So bad.
I've got a couple of demos from the early on. I think one of them is called Sky Diving, and with DIE in the middle of diving.
So you die at the end.
Well,
Spoiler alert.
the silliness of it, it's like literally you're standing on the edge of like a floating island, like 50,000 feet in the air, and
Okay.
you have to hit a button to just like step off the edge, and the whole game is you just falling forward down, and you have to dodge things on the way down.
Okay.
But there's no shoot. Like at the end, at some point, you just come up against land, and it's just there.
Oh,
There's nothing you
Jesus.
can do until there's just splat.
Well, that sounds terrible.
And
Yeah,
it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of people put on the headset and stand on the edge and just be like, "Nah, I don't want to."
Yeah.
This doesn't seem right.
I can imagine, and like, the way that this like does mess with your head, like the way that I'm like remembering these things too feels a lot different than how I normally think of video games.
Yeah.
Like, it really feels like I
Did
was
that thing.
there.
Yeah.
I experienced this thing because I was just like, oh yeah, then Atlas walked through the wall over there,
Yeah.
and like all this stuff happened. Oh yeah, the ocean's up there. Like in my head though, they really were
Yeah.
like to an extent.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
No.
because
Your
that's-
brain really just goes for it.
Yeah.
That's what your brain, even though it knows that it's not real, it's triggering other areas that you wouldn't have triggered
Yep.
if you're just looking at a screen.
Yeah, and
Even if you're
especially-
super immersed in the game and you're like way into like, oh, I love this game, and you're just focused, right?
Yeah.
You're still focused on a screen outside of you where you can see everything around it, and you can turn your head away and like look away from the screen and grab a drink or whatever.
Yeah.
But when you're in something like that and it's all around you and it's three-dimensional and with actual depth
Yep.
that you can perceive, and you have some type of agency in the world too, whether it's tracking your hands and like you can interact with the world in any type of way, your brain, it's triggering, it's lighting up completely different areas in
Yeah.
your brain, just being like, oh, like this is a place that I visited and
Yeah.
I did something there,
It is
Yeah.
weird.
as opposed to this is something I saw on TV.
Yeah,
VR,
which is
VR
very
hits
different.
me. It hits me hardest when I take the headset off.
Yes, I was gonna get there.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, holy shit, I'm in the middle of a room.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because once you, especially like
Unplug
once
from
you are
the
immersed,
Matrix.
once you're
Yeah.
immersed and once you let go of that, like you stop thinking about that after a while. And that's when
You-
you're really experiencing it.
Yeah.
And then like when I took that headset off, I was just like, oh, you like my friends are here, and like
It's almost
I'm in
like,
this
yeah.
Oh,
room,
hey,
and
when'd
I'm
you
like-
guys get here?
Yeah.
What happened to Atlas?
Yeah, it sort of like refreshes your reality. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like you get a new perspective on life on your world. It's weird.
Yeah,
It's very
it could be really great for like good narrative.
oh yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah.
just that could like immerse you in the way that books do in a certain way.
Well, that's
you know?
why
Like,
a lot
books
of
get in your head.
Yeah.
a lot of
True.
filmmakers
Yeah, I know what you
are already looking. There's a lot of top guys like Spielberg and
Yeah,
Spielberg,
they've
yeah.
been,
he's always super interested.
been
in, like, new game
vocal
stuff,
about
too.
they've been very vocal about trying to make 360 immersive. You're sitting in instead of watching people storm the beach on Normandy, Saving Private Ryan, like
You're in the boat.
you're there looking
Fuck.
around
Walking,
and
yeah.
being able to see it and feel like hear it all around you makes a huge difference in immersion and trying to understand what was actually going on. As far as narrative goes, it's going to provide huge challenges there.
Oh, absolutely.
To actually, it's one thing to experience an environment. It's another thing to tell a story in it
Yeah.
and make it make sense
Mhm.
and be something coherent that people can see and understand without forcing their view to certain spots.
Yeah.
Locking things off.
It's definitely a gigantic challenge. It's just at the level of empathy that could create could be like amazing if someone can nail it properly.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what people are gonna do. I've got a few 360 videos and or even like cinematic type experiences that were created in game engines for VR that there's no interaction with. You can't touch anything. You can't move. You're just taking it in. You're just experiencing it.
Mhm.
And it kind of just moves you through something, and you just see it and see what's going on. And it leads to some really cool things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to experience. Like one of them has a very Shadow of the Colossus type vibe,
Mhm.
and at one point this giant creature, like its appearance, basically it shows up behind you and it steps over you. And so in VR, you're like looking up, and it's just like, holy shit!
Yeah.
So if you were just like watching
Like
that on
Jurassic
screen, you
Park.
could, if you were watching that on a screen, you think of like watching, King Kong or Godzilla or something on like a TV screen. Like, okay, that's cool. And you got people who's like, oh man, you got to see Pacific Rim in the theater. Like that's the only way to see it because they're huge and crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I just got that experience sitting at my desk because this thing stepped over me,
Even
and I
better.
could see how far away everything is, like
Yeah.
the depth and the size and the relative feel of it, and
Yeah.
like with the 3D sound around it, you're just like, wow, all right, holy shit, like that's when things feel big and crazy.
I'm even excited just to even scale it back a little bit and just experience things like something like Gone Home or The Witness.
Yep.
And that I think would just be
The
incredible.
Witness is going to be in VR.
Yes,
They're
I
working
did hear
on
that.
Yeah.
Just because even just feeling the difference between how I experience those worlds versus how I'm currently experiencing The Witness on a screen. I could imagine that just being so different, especially with how immersive that world already is. Like, just imagine like being there and just being like, oh yeah, I'm just on the island again.
Yeah.
I'm just back.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I saw, this is going to be terrible to describe in words because the whole point of it is that it's like a perfect visual of it. But somebody tried to put together a comic that explains VR to people who don't know what it is. And it basically shows like a guy sitting on a couch with a screen, and there's TVs on like trees on the screen, and he's just like, okay, this is normal. Then it's like a 3D TV, and he's sitting there, and it's like kind of projected a little bit out of the TV, and it's kind of like, okay. And then the last panel is he's like standing in the forest, like, okay, this is VR.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's like you're in the trees, like
Yeah.
you're amongst them, and they're around you, as opposed to being separated and like looking through this window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like a huge difference in just experiencing any type of virtual content.
It's going to change everything for sure.
Yeah. And hopefully it's finally like the right time for that. I feel like we're
It
about
is.
there.
Yeah, we're there.
The tech is pretty much there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not going to
definitely.
hit. I still think we're a ways from mass adoption.
Yeah, I agree.
It's going to take a few years before.
Almost generations, probably.
Probably another generation. Like
Yeah.
this CV1 of the Rift and the Vive are going to spark the enthusiast community quite a bit.
Definitely.
And as people have more of those experiences where like they get out a little bit in more people's hands who aren't just developers,
Yep.
that they get to have those experiences and they go tell their friends like, holy shit, like I was at the bottom of the ocean, like you don't even know.
That's how it's going to, that's how people see that's like the conversation I hear once in a while is, it's not like VR, you don't know why it's great until you use it.
Yep.
And there's no way to communicate it in advertising, of any form. It's really going to have to be word of mouth and people getting each other to try it.
Yep.
And that's where the big, it happened just again this past Saturday night. Like people keep, ever since the CV versions of both were announced, people have been coming up. It's like, so they really screwed up on the pricing, huh?
No.
It's like, no.
No.
It's a little expensive right now because it's brand new stuff. It's all custom tech, and they couldn't afford to put out a cheesy one.
Yeah, you can.
If
Yeah,
they
exactly.
put out a
Yeah.
DK3
Or
that
Morpheus.
was equivalent to a Gear VR or like a cardboard, then you get a lot of people go, oh, that's cool.
Okay, see ya.
That kind of looks cool. I can look around them on top of the Eiffel Tower. Like that's
Yeah.
it's kind of cool that I can see 360 and that's far
Yeah.
away. That's far away. Oh, yeah, that's nice. And then they put it down and they don't tell anybody because they're like, whatever. Or if somebody asks them about it, they're like, yeah, it was cool, I guess. But that's not what they're going for. They're going for what's the best possible thing we can actually pull off right now. And so when people do, I was like, dude, how was it? Like, dude, Gladys showed up. Like, I was there. Like,
Yeah.
let me tell you.
She's
They want people to have those experiences
Like,
because that's
oh,
going to drive it more than
it's
anything
you.
else. Like the good experience at a higher price point will drive interest in VR much more than oh, I tried it, I got sick, screw
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Did you get sick at all? Was there any of that?
No,
No.
I felt fine. I don't really get motion sickness at all.
I'm
but-
also waiting for that craziness because again, once this gets in more hands, just the law of like large numbers.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be a lot of people being like,
Just complaining.
screw VR. I
Yeah.
tried it, puked my guts out. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone. Like, it's
Yeah.
going to happen. There's going to be a lot of people who are very susceptible to motion sickness, or it's just the things aren't going to be. They're going to run it on a bad computer, have a bad experience,
Yeah,
and it's going to taint that for a lot of people.
definitely going to have growing pains, but I feel like
Yeah.
the people the people with the voices that matter are into it at this point. Anyone who's tried it, like, I mean,
there's also
you get
so much
developers
money
enthusiastic.
behind it right now that it's happening.
Oh god,
There's no question. I mean, that's the big thing that was a big question for me because I was working with the DK1 a couple of years ago, and everybody's like, when Facebook bought Oculus, everybody's like, oh, it's over now, huh? Wait, huh? Oh, it's over?
No,
it's totally done. Everything's screwed, right?
This is the beginning.
Like, no, you realize they just made an insane dollar investment in this. So what it means is that no matter what, it's happening.
Yeah.
Might not take the shape that you want it to take, but it's happening.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of matters at this stage in the game, that something comes out that can at least spark the imagination of the people that are going to make really cool stuff with it to make it make sense. Because until the content is there, it's not really going to matter how cool the tech is.
And that's actually a really important thing to mention, is the content is not there yet, and it is not showing any signs of being there.
Well, they've been making quite a bit of investments in it. I mean, Oculus was pushing for, I think, close to 100 launch titles. Vive was touting, I think, 42 at last I heard, of like already internally kind of semi-vetted, like these projects are coming out around launch that are okay.
Have you seen Hover Junkers at all?
I'm aware of it, but I haven't
Have you heard about this, Craig?
Hover Junkers?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
It's a Vive game. It's going to be a multiplayer shooter.
Okay.
And it's like, post-apocalyptic, whatever. Everyone kind of has their own little ship.
Okay.
And so, like, your ship is dynamically sized to the room you're in. So then, like, you control your ship and drive your ship around, but then you're also, like, shooting people as well. So it's like a multiplayer shooter as well.
Yeah. So it's like Mad Max, except for instead of being on like a tanker, you're on like this little thing that's shaped kind of the size of the room that you're in, so that you can walk around to the railings and it fits given your space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it looks pretty cool.
And people who have played it said it's pretty awesome.
Nice.
I don't know much about it beyond the general setup.
Yeah, I'm not even sure when that one's out. Maybe when official launch happens or something, but it seems decently far along.
Looking at screenshots, it does look pretty cool.
Yeah. So I think that'll be neat. I'll definitely try that out because my friend's super excited about that one. So.
Did you play Job Simulator?
No, but I watched my other friend play it.
Yeah.
He just kept picking everything up and throwing it at his boss.
That's what you do.
And,
you just throw coffee in your face. You throw something over the wall.
Yeah, he did all that. He ate a donut out of the garbage and just started vomiting everywhere. It was pretty hilarious. I did play. There was like a shooting thing. So you're on like this platform and like there's these little robots that fly around and try and kill you. It's just like a wave-based arcade shooter. But that was really cool too because you have both guns, but then you can also reach behind your back and pull out a shield and stuff. And it's just like one hit, you're dead. So you gotta, it's just a simple arcade shooter, but it was a lot of fun. Really disorienting to aim at first, but then you're just like, oh, that's because I'm actually physically holding things and aiming them. And
yeah, you expect it to be like cursor based and like easy.
You're like,
If you've played a ton of first person shooters, I've seen this with a lot of people who try FPS stuff in VR. Is that they try to like look at something and then just like pull the trigger.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you don't have that's one of the first things they figured out with VR. Like literally lesson number 1, first time somebody ever put on a DK1 and tried to play Half-Life was, the gun's attached to my face. Yeah, this is garbage. We need to separate these. You can't. Have gun face.
That's how it used to be. That's So I remember at like Darien Lake when I was like 12. They had like an old VR thing or something.
I played that exactly.
You did? Yeah.
As you're walking in on the like left,
I
remember where it was for some reason.
It was like it was just Duke Nukem 3D, I think.
Yep,
but it was
Nukem
like
3D.
attached.
I played the same one.
Yeah,
and even though Duke Nukem 3D is like the enemies are all billboards, like the whole game's all they're all 2D. Everything in that game is 2D, but it's in 3D.
This was the one where it was like a platform, right? And it had the whole thing around you for whatever reason. I guess to track you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a big helmet that came down.
I didn't play Duke Nukem. Mine was more of like an abstract VR, also a shooter. I couldn't even hardly understand.
Yeah, isn't it like are you on a roller coaster and like you can shoot like bats and stuff? I think that was another one I played there.
No, it was. I don't think so. But I will say, much like this has happened to me twice in my life. The first time I played that VR thing, my mind couldn't really process it, like what was happening in the virtual space. And so I don't remember quite. I remember playing it and really having no idea what had just happened. And that's partially
traumatized. You like blacked it.
There's it's partially due to the low fidelity of what it was.
Floor.
I mean, it's janky as fuck.
Yeah.
But also my brain. So the first time I ever saw Doom on a screen, I couldn't understand what was happening. The 3D space, my brain couldn't process it. It was just, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just nonsensical.
Huh.
Like, I knew kind of what was happening. Like, I could piece together, like, okay, I think I understand. It's like I'm walking around, but my brain, it's kind of like when they say, like, when Native Americans first saw ships from Europe, like, they couldn't really see them because their brain had never conceptual. Like, it was such a leap in, like, what was possible that they couldn't understand what they were seeing. So they would look right, and they couldn't process this, and it was like this. That's exactly what had happened to me in Doom and in the first time I played VR. Anyways, so.
But yeah, I mean that was a system where the cursor was tied to where your head was facing. It took me a bit to figure that out too because I wasn't used. I was used to playing shooters a little bit. I feel like I had played GoldenEye by then.
Yeah.
But I was also used to just running and gunning, and I'm doing that, and I'm just like, how do I aim up? And then, like, eventually, like, towards the end of the demo, I like, moved my head or something. I was like, oh, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I guess this is actually, like...
And that's a good example of, like, that experience is exactly the run at VR that was too soon, right?
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
People were just not... In so many ways, the technology wasn't ready. People's minds weren't ready.
Yeah, like you said, your mind wasn't ready. That's the first hurdle to overcome anytime that I've ever demoed anything in VR that I made or at other demos.
Yeah.
Is that the first time I put somebody in a headset, invariably what happens is you put them in, like, can you see all right? And they're like, yup. And they just sit there straight ahead.
Yeah.
Like they're watching something on the screen that's outside the headset. And you always have to tell them, look around.
Yeah.
And then they start turning their head and they're like, oh shit. It happens almost every time.
It was my buddy Tom, he was with me. He's never done VR, so he tried the Vive after me. So he had an idea of what to do because he saw me walking around and using it and everything. But his reaction we got on video, it's hilarious because he's just like, what? Like, what is this? Like, how is, why? What?
Yeah,
it's real good.
I've got a few of those too.
Yeah,
it's definitely funny seeing some people's reactions to it once they kind of let go and they start taking it in for what it is.
Yeah. Oh, and one more thing. One of my favorite things that I'm enjoying with VR, as a long-term gamer and part developer and stuff, I always just like to break things as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
VR is really interesting to try and break because usually they're a little bit ahead of you.
Yeah.
And I found that a few times. I forget what I was playing here. I think it was like that one Escape the Car game or something.
I Expect You to Die.
Yes.
Yeah, that was really good.
It was really cool. And, I was just like, well, what if I'm sitting in this office, what if I just decide to grab this book over there or something? And I could. And I was like, that's awesome. Like, I just love trying to mess with it. So, one thing my friend Tom did, there was like a Fruit Ninja clone that he played on the Vive. And at first, he was accidentally, like, it's so precise. You have a sword. You only use one controller for this. It's so precise that, like, sometimes he was just accidentally hitting fruit with the side of the sword. And it would bounce the fruit away.
Wow.
So then eventually, like, in order to start the game, you got a slice of melon. So eventually, like, he's sitting there, like, trying to flick it up on the sword over and over, like, making this little game out of it. And that was great. And then another thing that I did in this shooting game, I turned my gun around and shot myself in the face. And it worked. I was just like, son of a bitch. I'm like, I love just trying something different in it. And the reactions I've had so far have been really awesome. And just, like, it makes it that much more immersive that like people are thinking about this. And
so that's actually the real challenge, much like we were talking about, like the 360 video stuff, how it's going to change how filmmakers have to set up their experiences. It becomes a different thing where you can't cheat the system like you used to.
Yep.
Games are no exception, where if you had a cutscene in a game in the past, you could just render it all facing one direction.
Yep.
And there could be nothing behind the camera to save down on time, rendering power, or whatever. You wouldn't have to worry about people just turning around to seeing what's behind
Yeah.
them. Whereas in VR, you always have to account for that.
Yep.
You always have to account for people who can look in any direction. They can lean into things. One of the things that people, it's still kind of a major concern, is, say, for example, a game like Skyrim or Call of Duty, where there's a ton of little details all over the place that makes the world feel very full and much more real than it would otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of tricks going on in that with like the level of detail, like on a lot of those items is really small. Like,
yeah.
Where if you like look at a piece of paper on a desk, you can see that it's a piece of paper, and there's maybe some like pixels on it, or it looks like there's some writing or whatever. But if you got it really up close, you'd see that it's a bunch of junk.
Yeah.
And the game is set up such that they always know that the camera's always going to be at least this far away.
Yeah.
So you can see and look over there and be like, oh, there's a piece of paper on the table there. I can see that there's words on it.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that there's writing. But the fact that I can't make out those little letters, that's just because I can't get any.
And I'm going to go and pick it up, and then it's going to load a high quality version of it. And such.
Or usually you can't even interact with it
or
because they've never even made a high quality version. So that's the thing. So exactly what you expect to be able to do is to grab it and be able to pull it closer and have the LOD go up and pop up and be really high res. Oh, I want to read this flyer that's on the table. Well, in VR, you could walk up to that desk and like maybe your bounding box stops you so you can't get super close, but then you can lean in and like look real close, and now you can see that, oh, this is junk. And so all those old tricks go out the window, and it's kind of a problem as far as actual power of the machines. I mean, you know, if you keep it small, it's not that big a deal, especially if you go for a less highly realistic detail aesthetic. But a lot of those little things are all gonna have to be rethought and go away.
That's the fundamental difference, right? That people have discovered is that the world density is completely different. Like in a game where you're playing on the screen, you really can't have things be. The world kind of needs to be spaced. Like your experience needs that space, but when you're in VR, that space is almost alienating, and so everything for it to be effective needs to really be in your face and be up close, and like almost the density, like almost like the difference between Left 4 Dead 2 and Vermintide to me. Like those big open spaces are great, but like in order for VR to really be successful, you need just dense space in a way that it would almost be unplayable without VR.
Or like Job Simulator. Or if you tried to play that with a mouse and keyboard,
that would be awful.
It'd be a disaster.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because there's just so many things in such a small space.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
And
you need it. I mean, it's just sort of like a requirement of VR. It's something that I've been sort of thinking about a lot. You know, you can have a game work in both worlds, but you can't take the rules of non-VR and make a game that fully utilizes VR.
I mean, that's actually one of the lessons that's at one of the talks that I saw in September in Boston. Was they were talking about like one of the things you try not to do in like a typical first-person shooter is let things get super close to the screen because it screws up scale and it screws up being able to see around it, and it messes up your vision and you can't really see. You need to be able to take in more than just what's right in front of you.
Right.
But that's like also one of the things they recommend doing in VR. Like bring things close to the screen, let people get them right up to their face. Don't break the plane. Like don't go into their face because that'll screw people up.
Yeah.
But don't break the plane, but get close and let people pick things up and bring them right there, but just not into their own head.
Yeah.
And because that's one of the coolest things where people can actually see something up close and like look around it, and they can still maintain scale with everything around them. So a lot of the fundamental rules are being rewritten as we speak.
Yeah.
And one of the big hurdles that hasn't really been solved yet, even though there's been about 1,000 stabs at it now, is just basic locomotion. Like how do you get around?
Yeah.
Like outside of a room the size that you're in, you know. Hover Junkers is an interesting hybrid.
Yeah.
Because it allows you to kind of walk around this room and then the room moves around a 3D world.
Yep.
But a lot of them are trying to come up with ways to do this where one of the most popular ones right now is the teleport move.
Yeah.
Where you just like click off into the distance and you instantly warp to that spot. It's disorienting, but it doesn't seem to make people sick.
Yeah.
Like there's no motion sickness involved with that, but it takes you a second. Like, where am I now? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. You're like, how close am I to this wall now? Okay,
yeah,
that's weird.
Yeah, that's a little. But you know, after a second, you're like, okay, I'm here now.
Yeah.
Whereas if you one of the first things that people tried to do was click that and then like fly over to it and like have it like nice smooth curve fly, and everybody just got sick immediately. And actually one short of the teleporting is if you click off into the space, actual linear motion is like the next best thing. Like, don't accelerate, don't decelerate, don't move on a curve, just a straight line from point A to B and move at a constant speed between 2 points. Just bing, and then you fly straight to that point and you stop. That's actually much more comfortable than like easing out and then easing in and flying on a curve, which also goes against what a lot of people, if you just do snapping like linear, like I'm going to move from here to here and go and then stop it on the dime in a classical game on a screen, people will be like,
that feels horrible.
Feels stupid.
Yeah.
Why didn't you slide it in and like, have like little animations that, slide it in easy, but it's uncomfortable to be sitting there in that. The other one is just how do you turn characters around without actually physically turning around? Like, just free motion yaw is really uncomfortable. Like if you're just playing like a first person shooter and using like a stick to turn your head left and right, and you're still sitting straight ahead, but everything's turning around your headset, like it's really bad.
It's bad.
At least that's a little bit easier with the Vive, just because you can physically turn around.
Oh yeah, you can turn all the way around with the Oculus as well.
Well, yeah, no, I know. I mean, just since you're actually standing and walking, like you just literally turn around, and it makes a little more sense there.
Yeah, no, both of the new ones have they can pick you up in any orientation. So the Vive has like the lighthouses, so it can pick you up all like in any orientation. The CV1 Rift has markers on the back of the headset now too, so when you turn your back on the tracker, it can still pick up your position and keep
cool.
you, so you can turn all the way around in your chair and it still picks up where you are.
Nice.
Because you used to lose that.
Is Oculus have any plans to do it? Like, I mean, they haven't really been designing off the bat from room scale, but do they have plans to kind of wedge it into what they've already got?
I mean, I've heard them say a couple of things. I mean, the only thing that is for sure is that the touch controllers are coming out at some point to do hand tracking.
If you pre-ordered a Rift, are you definitely going to get those, or is that...
You get first crack at them.
Okay.
Like you still have, they're going to be an extra charge.
Yeah.
Like you'll have to buy them, but anybody who pre-ordered a Rift is going to be able to pre-order the touch controllers whenever they put them on pre-order. All the Rifts are shipping with Xbox controllers right now. With which, with all the stuff that I've done with Leap Motion and the Razer Hydras with the DK1 and 2 that I have, like that's the big thing that I find as like a lift for presence is being able to use your hands in VR. And so the fact that, the Vive ships and Oculuses are coming, it's kind of obvious. Like it's one of the things that I've been talking about for a long time. It's like that's why I have a Razer Hydra, is because I wanted, I've never played a game on a screen with the Razer Hydra. I have them because I wanted to make a lightsaber demo or hold a gun around a corner and shoot stuff and do those kind of things.
And the Vive.
Oh, they're already making them.
So good.
They're already coming.
Yeah, I think for a bit, what's going to happen is really like people just kind of messing around with really like casual level games, trying to figure out different pieces of it, very small scale experiences, and kind of going from there.
There's a lot of experimenting going on in the space right now, which is awesome because it's cool to kind of see the first wave, right?
Yeah, it's like a new renaissance.
Gaming. It's almost like games starting over again.
Yeah, it's
a new kind of experience. It's like switching from playing board games to playing video games on screens. Like it's almost that big of a shift.
Yeah, like to me right now it feels like we're in the arcade stage, and like now it's coming to the home consoles and stuff.
And much like you saw in the early
experiences shift.
Much like you saw in the early arcade games, there are a lot of them that are just really small experiences.
That's
like
exactly
really
how I feel about
tight,
it right now.
Silly little tech demos or fun little games that you can play repetitively.
Yep.
But they're like they just do one thing really well and do it over and over and over again.
Because that was
as opposed to playing, Final Fantasy VII or whatever, where you go on.
That was our ability at the time, and then it grows from there.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see kind of how everything takes shape for sure. We'll have all of these things here shortly.
It definitely quickly made me want to get a new computer, and I played Oculus, and I was like, yeah, it's cool. I'm not getting VR yet. No,
that's another thing that I've been saying to anybody who's asked me a question for over a year, and then people still ask me the same freaking question. It's like, how much does it cost or everything? It's like, how much is this headset? Like for like the DK2, and it was like $350 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, that's it? No.
No.
Not even close. That's like, 20% of the cost.
I
If
think
that.
the Vive is
it's
800 or something too, 700.
Yeah,
800.
the real cost is, do you have a computer that can run it?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
If you don't, then you're just talking $1,500 to $2,000 to build a computer that's capable of really maxing them out and being future proof for a while, where it can actually keep doing the stuff.
Future proof.
I built. So I pre-ordered the Rift and then immediately realized my computer was too slow and I had to do all this. So I completely overhauled my computer. I got all new parts, and I probably spent less than $1,000, and I got the exact stuff that Oculus recommended.
Yeah, maybe if you got some sales here and there, and you already had some existing pieces like other screens, mouse, keyboard, case, power supplies, all that stuff. I mean, these things add up.
I had to get RAM, motherboard, processor, video card, and a power supply. Pretty much the whole kit. Minus, so not a case or keyboard and stuff. But
Well, you made out well then.
I did okay. Yeah, I mean, I've been putting together the computers for a long time, and the question is it future proof? Which is your point. I don't know how long it's going to last. Probably not. Probably not that long, considering they're just figuring this shit out still. So
Yeah.
Also,
probably
if you
next gen, I'll probably already be outdated.
you want a decent size SSD with also some other backup storage, and all that kind of stuff. You also need other screens that aren't, because you're not going to fire up the computer and just put on the Rift and run Windows to launch your games. You need,
I mean, if you're starting from,
you need monitors. If you're starting from scratch,
if you're starting from zero,
there's no way you're getting out for underneath those dollars, and actually being strong enough to do it all.
Yeah, but most people getting into VR right now are not starting from zero.
The people who are getting into it right now, but everybody, since they announced the price, the internet through its collective shit fit, as it's always want to do.
It's so funny. They're like, the Rift will be 600, and everybody's like, that's bullshit. And they're like, the Vive will be 800. And everybody's like, okay.
That
sounds about right.
Well, because they also got conditioned by that. They're like, I guess that's how, after they threw their initial shit fit and they came down and they talked to a couple people who are rational around them.
Yeah.
Like, the original iPhone was $600 and it doesn't do half of what this shit
Yeah, right.
I guess okay.
And it's
VCRs launched at $1,500.
Did they really?
Wasn't the original PlayStation at least 700? I think.
The 8-bit Nintendo was like $450 in 1980s dollars. Adjusted for inflation, all new things.
Actually, I've seen charts adjusted for inflation. The Oculus is spot on, as far as being reasonably priced.
But and there was and then everybody's complaining about that. I was like, well, it's too much. I was like, do you have a computer? No. I was like, even if it was $200, you couldn't afford it, because the computer's going to cost you 3 times what the headset costs.
Yeah.
If you don't already have that stuff. If you do, then you can just buy the headset. Good for you. But if you don't, that's the barrier. That's the first thing you got to have before you can actually do it. And that's another reason why I'm still holding out hope and keeping an eye on what I consider the dark horse in this whole race is the PlayStation VR.
Really?
Because they have an install base. They have it running on a platform that only costs $400.
Yeah.
That's pre-configured for them and guaranteed to run a certain way. Nobody
true.
has to install it, buy Windows and install an OS and make sure it's got all the proper drivers and updated and all these things that people are scared of when they're building like a PC.
Yeah.
That's all out the window, and it's at a cheaper price point. I mean, the
the
graphics
same
card
time,
they're
though,
recommending costs more than a PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
It actually, it literally does. The one I got was more than a PS4. Yeah. New. The only thing is that the PS4 can't really cut it, though, from what I've heard.
And again, that's where, the time will tell as these things get optimized, as these things get better, faster, stronger. If you have something on board on the headset that can help render some of the things, I'm pretty sure PlayStation VR actually has some off console computing going on.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Because I think they're even aiming to launch at that same price point. I think last I heard they were aiming for $400 to $500 just for the headset. Jeez. They're not marketing it as a peripheral. They're marketing it as a new platform that needs the old platform to run it. But if you actually do the math there, say it comes out at $500 and a PS4 is $400, you're, soup to nuts, $900.
When are they?
And you're done, and you know it's going to work, and you don't have to configure anything. You just download the game and it plays.
When are they estimating a release date?
I don't know when their last time was, but was able to demo it. I've played the PlayStation VR stuff.
Oh, really?
And it was good. I mean, it was good. I mean, was it better than the CV1 that I played on? No, it wasn't. But it was.
But it's not.
But was it better than a lot of the stuff I played on my DK2? Yeah, it was. It was good. And it was comfortable. It's interesting. It's an interesting little headset. It's different than, I don't know how the Vive's headset works. But as far as actual comfort on head, the PlayStation 1 was really probably the most comfortable one that I played with so far. And it's awkward to put it on, but once it's on, it's like an extension of your head. You forget that you have it on. Because it's like, they put it on and there's like a little screw and nut combo in the back where it expands out over the bridge of, like, if you feel like in the bump in the back of your head, there's a little thing that comes down below that, and you like ratchet it into that and like tighten it.
So
and it sounds weird.
Drill it into your head. And...
Yeah, you just drill a hole in your
Sounds
head.
like you could die.
You put a wire.
Yeah.
You put an Ethernet cable into it. So you just kind of crank it in, and like you just twist the little thing, and it tightens it up a little bit. It's not too tight. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. There's no pressure.
So it just sits on that little.
But it rests below like that little bump in the back of your
And
head.
it kinda
If you
uses
pick
it
up
to
your hand and just
stabilize.
reach back and put it like, below that little bump, there's a little thing that slides in, like it cranks in underneath that, and the screen. Actually, you can pull it out away from. So you picture having like a ring like around the top of your head that's resting on that, and now the screen can be pulled out in front of that. So there's like a little slider on it, so you can slide that out. So it's kind of hanging in front of you, but you can look around and you can see out of your peripheral. You can see things in the room. You can see out of your peripheral. It's not taking up your full field of view.
Yeah.
And then when you're ready to play, you just grab that and you slide it in, and it fills up the field of view. So if you want to do those things, you don't have to take the headset off to reach for a drink or do that kind of stuff. You can just kind of slide it out and grab stuff, or like see something or check a text, and then slide it back, and the ring stays put. The ring never moves, and it feels. You forget that it's on. I don't know how for long term. I only played some demos. I didn't get to play in it for like 4 hours, so I don't know if that becomes uncomfortable over time. But at the time, it was really comfortable. It was really secure. It felt like you could like whip your head around. It's not gonna shift. And with some integrated audio where you could actually have the audio and everything with it, it was a good experience. The demo they had to play was a lot of fun. It worked with the PlayStation Move controllers, which actually
that's cool.
I find they've actually found a use for the Move controllers that I actually think is something that's viable and interesting to use them for.
That's cool.
The only thing I've ever used them for was Johann Sebastian Joust. Everything else I could care less about, really. Yeah. But they work perfectly fine as VR controllers. Were they as responsive as a Razer Hydra? No. Were they as responsive as probably what the Vive has? Probably not. But they were good enough that I could track both hands in the scene. I was able to grip things, like reach out. To describe part of the demo, I was sitting in a car with like people in like a getaway from like a bank robbery is something like they kind of described it as. So there's a dude sitting to the right of you who's like this crazy British mobster guy who's yelling expletives at you and screaming at you to do stuff.
Calling you a C word.
Probably. I don't remember that. But you could reach out and mess with all the stuff in the cab. You can reach out and like mess with the radio, reach out and grab the glove box, and you open it up and there's a gun in the glove box, and there's a whole bunch of like ammo clips to your right, and then you reach out, you click the thing, you open the glove box, you grab the gun, you grab the clips, you actually use your hands to slide the clip into the gun and rack it, and you can aim it around freely and shoot like out the windows at these things that are coming up at you. And it was totally fun to play.
Yeah.
And it totally worked well enough that I enjoyed the whole thing. I wasn't like, this is frustrating, I can't do what I want to do. I was able to hand the gun back and forth between my hands, drop clips out, easily kind of grab them. I was able to open the door and like pop it and like lean out. So again, showing that it could do precision tracking. So I was actually able to like open the door and like lean out the door. So it does all the same kind of things in a convincing enough way that I had fun doing it, and it felt like a good VR experience.
Cool.
Now again, it was, a seated experience. I was locked to a spot. I wasn't able to walk around or do any of that kind of stuff like the room scale VR like you would do with the Vive. But it was good enough that I could see the people who are scared of building a PC or don't have the money to build a PC and don't have the money to buy the other headsets, and they don't really care about like the crazy whiz-bang, top-of-the-line, bleeding-edge tech of having the best possible VR experience, that if it's good enough, they've got a massive chance at a huge install base before anybody else can really capture it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to take over the enthusiast market. just like consoles never killed PC gaming. Like, there's always going to be people who want to crank everything up to 11. That's not going away.
Yeah.
But if the Wii taught us anything, and a lot of other things taught, like, or if the VCR taught us anything, having the best tech or the best picture or whatever it is doesn't necessarily mean that you're the winner.
Yeah.
Right? It's ease of use beats best tech almost every time in business, as long as there's marketing behind it.
And the right cost.
And you get the right cost, and
content.
The ease of use has to be beyond a certain point.
Yeah.
Of like, it's so easy to use. There's so many fewer barriers in the way to just making it work that people are willing to use a slightly lesser than experience to make it happen. AKA anybody who's played, the last gen of console games when PCs were like way beyond them.
Yep.
Like, yeah, it's way easier to just jump on that and play with your friends on a console than it is to try to figure it out and hook it up on a PC, cost, time, all that. So I look at that as kind of a very similar analogy. Like, they are actually console VR, right?
Yeah.
So they've got a whole section of the market that they could carve out if they do it right. Now, if they ship and everybody gets motion sick because they can't update the screen fast enough, and they do a lot of things wrong, or like the move controllers are only good for like shooting a gun and they're clumsy at everything else, then they're gonna basically squander what I consider to be a massive opportunity.
But it's video games, so all you need is guns. So. No, I was pretty down on it, but you've thoroughly convinced me, actually. I hope it does well. I mean, it's good for the industry if it does.
So. I mean, at the end of the day, I really hope they all do well.
Exactly.
I really, at some point, like most of these emerging techs, like somebody's going to kind of take the lead, but not necessarily. I mean, Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony have been...
There's going to be niches. Like, Oculus is going to be the sort of... I think Oculus will have the largest market share because it is going to be for most people. And I think the Vive is going to be for gamers. And I think those guys will probably understand their place in the market and do those things well. And I think that's probably largely how that'll play out. I mean, the Oculus is owned by Facebook. That's the kind of people that they know. That's the market they know, and that's the market they're going to go for if they're smart.
Yeah,
not that they're not going to go for gaming at all, but that's going to be their home, I think, is a more casual experience.
Yeah, there's certainly some intelligent companies behind them at the very least. Yeah. So I think they're all in good hands.
Well, as the tech just gets better, faster, smaller, it'll all lead to cheaper, and then it becomes less of an argument of, can you build this PC that can run it? Hopefully 5 years from now, we're talking about, oh yeah, my laptop from 5 years ago can run the CV2, whatever.
Yeah.
Much like, there's a lot of games out where it's like, you don't need a beast to play it if it's not like trying to crank every setting all the way up.
Yeah.
But there's a barrier in VR where if it's below a certain frame rate, if it's below a certain level of fidelity, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, which is
because you're not just seeing it on a screen and being like, "Oh, I wish the resolution was higher," because there's a lot of pixels there.
Right.
It's more like, I need to get out of this.
Yeah.
Like, I can't even play it.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Yeah.
So here's hoping that these launches go well, and not everybody in the world that isn't us yaks.
Yeah. I mean, so far it seems like things are going well, so it's good.
No, it's definitely cool to hear about the Vive stuff, because that's the only one I haven't played personally yet.
You should play
I want
it.
to get my hands on it.
It's real cool.
Where's my invite?
You can come try it.
Or you could bring it over here.
How did your friend get it?
I don't even know. Actually, I didn't ask.
Well, the developers got the pre's for developers have been out for a while.
Yeah, I think
this is the new pre-orders that just got announced are for consumers. So
he got in the beta somehow.
Yeah, they took applications like sometime last year.
Yeah, he might have just done that.
Yeah,
we applied. He's been pretty excited about it for a while.
We didn't get one.
What's that?
We didn't get one.
Oh.
But whatever. No, it's definitely cool. I want to see what's different about them from the people that I know that have played both. A lot of the people that walk away saying that they like the Vive better.
Yeah.
And I think it's partially because of the immersion of room scale.
Yeah.
The thing is that there's going to be a lot of seated VR.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That it's not going to matter for
a while.
Yeah. So, I mean, through that, we'll see how that plays. I mean, I guess if you're playing something like Elite Dangerous, it doesn't really matter if you can walk around the room or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless they want to make a little larger spaceship from me.
I'm interested to see how they deal with larger spaces.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, you said like Job Simulator is a very tight space. Hover Junkers is kind of scaled to your space. I'm interested to see how they deal with like Skyrim in VR on the Vive, where you could like walk around the world, because, you know, if you've got line of sight for 5 miles and you're supposed to be able to go over there, you don't want to just teleport to the mountain.
Right.
And you actually want to walk through it. How are you going to deal with that?
I mean, it's pretty easy to limit. Just limit the distance to teleport. So
only
like
travel
10 feet
via
or some
horse.
Well, not even like teleport. I mean, like eventually you're going to want to be
A
able
horse
to
would
walk.
work.
You're going to want to be able to walk.
Solved it. We're good.
shit.
You could probably, the only answers that I'm aware of currently are something like the Omni, like treadmill,
Yeah.
satellite dish thing where you can run in every direction and it holds you in place,
Yeah.
or redirection. We talked about this a while back, but it's one of the things
on the
that
last
they play around.
episode.
Yeah,
We had a VR
it's
podcast right after the Rift was announced in the pre-orders. We spent like 2 hours, and then
Well, you get some of that back today. At least.
some of it. We definitely we covered some of the same topics.
That's good.
But one of the things we talked about was redirection. It was like, so if you have a decently sized room and you walk, and the game kind of shifts each time you take a step, like imperceptibly, the game can trick you into kind of walking in a circle, but you'll feel like you're walking in a straight line in the game. It's an interesting little trick. It only works at certain sizes. Like in a room that we're sitting in right now, I don't think you could pull it off because it'd be too much of a drastic turn that you'd have to make.
Yeah.
But if it was like twice the size, you could potentially think you're walking in a straight line and just kind of like be veering slightly to the right each time.
The room we're sitting in is like what, 10? Like you said earlier, about 10 by 10. You'd say.
Yeah.
So a room twice that size.
This
might be able
room
to do
is 12 by 11.
So you're saying a room about twice that size could probably do something like that.
You could probably pull it off. Like if we walked outside here and we were just in the open room in the space, you could definitely do it.
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen somebody put on some of like the like drunk goggles that like cops will, like if you ever like a demo where like the cops will be like, hey, walk in a straight line, and then they put like little ski goggles on you that twist your vision and like make it upside down a little bit, and then you try to walk in a straight line, like you can't walk in a straight line. But it's the same kind of idea, just applied much more subtly.
Yeah,
where
really
it'll throw you. You'll think you're walking straight, but it'll throw you off.
Because people in VR headsets don't look crazy enough. Now we're gonna make you walk in circles for hours.
I mean, that could be a great thing, actually. I mean, if you think about just the benefits of actually getting off your ass and walking around.
Oh, absolutely.
Once in a while.
That's
having something where you can actually run around on an Omni treadmill but play a game as opposed to having to go to the gym or whatever.
Yeah.
It could be big for certain people's actual well-being to get up and walk around.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I think we were joking about it last time. Where it's like, you know, sometime in the future, you'd be looking, that dude's shredded. Must be a gamer. But as these things kind of get, they loosen up to that. It'll be very interesting.
Nice.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm excited. How much good time we got here?
We've been babbling for a while.
I gotta get going.
It is really warm in this room.
Yeah. Well, we got ventilation.
Like an hour.
Hopefully, ventilation coming.
Yes.
This weekend.
Tomorrow.
Yep. So, all right. Anything else we want to get into?
I've got plenty to talk about, but no time to talk about it. So
next week.
Yeah, I've been finished XCOM.
Oh shit!
It was dope.
Cool.
Great review.
This game is dope.
And I've been playing a lot of Tomb Raider. Didn't play The Witness, but you've been playing The Witness, Ryan.
Yes.
Sorry, Brian.
No. Not my name.
So yeah, we got to talk about that, and I want to try and play a little more of that. Yeah, and I guess we'll get into some Vermintide later tonight. Maybe we'll have some stories.
Possibly. I want to hear what happened to the BGS crew in XCOM. It sounds like everybody survived, which I'm sad to hear.
I mean, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, everybody made it. The last mission's kind of nuts, but I had the hang of it by then. So to clarify, so last time I talked about it, I was talking about how hard it was, and I went back. Was sort of, as they say, save scumming my way through to kind of learn everything, but it was pretty clear at some point. I was about halfway through, and I'd kind of seen all the tricks. So I started on veteran. That was too hard, so I went back to like easy and did Iron Man easy, but then that was like way too easy. So then I went back to veteran Iron Man then instead, and by the time I saw all the stuff on easy and kind of got the hang of it, and by the time I was done with veteran Iron Man, it was really easy. Like I really wasn't having any trouble. I almost lost. My girlfriend almost died at one point in real life. No, in the game. In the game, she completely just got lit up and got to the point where like it was like 50-50. She got hit, and then it does like it's a 50% chance that you'll die or bleed out, and she went fortunately into the bleed out state. I revived her and actually healed her back to full health and just got her right back up to the front lines because that's what her role was. But in the last mission, yeah, it went pretty good. I mean, they throw a lot of stuff at you. It wasn't super easy or anything, but I kind of knew the rhythm of the game by then, and whole BGS crew made it through. Anthony just kind of sat in the corner and took pot shots, and I got really lucky. I really did get pretty lucky in a couple of ways that did make it easy. Ingrid actually pulled through quite a few times, but yeah, great game. And I've already started new games, so I've already bumped it up on Iron Man on the other modes, and I'm just losing every time now. So
I do just like the way that it changes how you have to talk about the game when you rename the characters after BGS people.
Yeah.
You can't. It no longer becomes like. So then I had this guy on my squad, and he's like,
it was like
then my support guy. It's like you did this, and my girlfriend almost died, and Anthony was in the corner. Like it just changes the vocabulary that gets used.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, my buddy sacrificed me to save his girlfriend. He's like, Mallette, you were great. You went on a suicide mission and you saved Ariel. Thank you so much. And I was like, it was my honor. And he's like, then I cloned you and now you're Ryan Mallette. I was like, good. He's like, yeah, he's doing way better.
So yeah, but yeah, I guess it wrapped up XCOM, and the BGS crew made it happen.
Nice. Yeah, my friend got it for me for my birthday, so I'll be checking it out.
Oh
soon.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I'll make sure I'm in it.
Play that game so bad
because I love BGS crew, and I'll probably lose.
You gotta tweet it all out. Like I was tweeting out updates as they happen, and that was fun for me. I don't know if you guys were tired of it, but
no, it was kind of funny. I mean, my favorite part was when John died. You sent out, I was like, sorry, man. And it's like a picture of his epitaph with like a little character that kind of sort of barely looks like him, and his little epitaph, and he's like, oh man. And he tweets out like the Call of Duty, like press F to pay respects.
Yeah. the best part of that was it was like Friday or something at arcade night. He had heard that I was doing this and felt left out, so I put him in the game. And I added him. So, like, the next day, I tweeted his death. Because he made it, like, 2 missions and just got killed. It was really funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm dying to play that one. I just haven't had the time. And then we have to play a little bit of Vermintide.
Yeah.
Maybe I probably won't have a ton of time. But we'll see.
All right.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. That pretty much wraps it up for here. We can take that out too. You won't.
I'm leaving it.
Yeah.
That wraps us up today here over at BGS.
Future John. I left it. Ha ha ha.
Son of a bitch.
I hope your beard is doing well, Future John.
Future John's way cooler than present John.
So much cooler.
Is that true though?
We love you, Future John. You're way better than the guy that's here right now.
So maybe when I'm sitting here in the future, I'm like, oh. No, that's totally not true.
Yeah.
I was way cooler then. That wraps it up for us here today. Keep an eye on the Twitter, Facebook, website for all the upcoming events here at Buffalo Game Space. We've got some fun and exciting
Twitter at Buffalo Game
Buff
Space.
Game Space.
At Buff Game Space on Twitter
because we are swole. Very buff.
Because it doesn't fit.
Oh, I guess.
Yeah.
yeah, we got some really cool events coming up. A whole new series of workshops being announced. I know we have a 3-part Blender series that's just been posted. Hope to see you guys around at that. Check you out at the meetups and the upcoming events, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.